there are, a lot of small things that need to be kept in mind when you actually make out a pitch deck. So my attempt over the next hour or so is to, kind of take you through some of the, examples and give you some information as to how you guys can go ahead and, make out a full-fledged pitch deck. Gajendra, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So as mentioned by Gajendra, so this is a program which TiE Mysuru. So TiE Mysuru represents the 3 TiE chapters which are there in Karnataka for this particular pitch fest: TiE Hubli, TiE Bengaluru, and TiE Mysuru. So TiE Mysuru has taken the lead in coordinating the, TiE University Pitch Fest for this year across Karnataka. As KTech Innovation Hub, IKP, we are the knowledge partner. So we are a state government of Karnataka project. So we have 5 centers across the state. So I'll just take you back through one slide. Those of you who had attended earlier, this is for people who are doing it for the first time, attending for the first time. So typically a pitch deck is it's a very brief presentation. So kindly look at the words which are highlighted in color. It says it's a brief presentation, and it is used to provide the audience with a very quick overview, right? So brief, quick overview. So you need to remember this, and what you're actually trying to present could be an idea or it could be a business plan, because it depends on which stage of an entrepreneurial venture you are. Are you still at an idea stage, or are you at a stage where you've probably got a prototype and you would like to go to a minimum viable product stage, or you've already tested out the product, you've got 1 or 2 products installed in the market and you are now looking at scaling up or whatever. So what is important here is that typically, if you look at a pitch deck, it's normally used during a face-to-face or online meetings with potential investors, customers, partners, co-founders. So what is important to understand here is, if you look at the audience, in most cases, you will not have enough time. Typically, you would be given about, say, a 10-minute window or a 12-minute window, wherein you have to be able to summarize what all you want to say within that small period of time. So in that sense, it's a pretty challenging effort to actually make out. It's actually both an art and as well as a science to actually make a pitch deck. It's not that it's impossible. There are lots of templates which are available on the internet. So these templates actually guide you through, give you a lot of tips, information as to what you need to put onto a slide, what is it and how you could describe it and so on. So I'm not very fussy at this stage about what's the kind of template you need to use, but there are certain basic things that your pitch deck should contain. Okay, that's very important. So, for example, so this is another document which you would be sharing. I've just borrowed this from the TiE document. If you really look at a pitch deck, the first thing it needs to contain is an introduction along with the value proposition. So basically, this is where you're introducing your company. This is where you're introducing a tagline, which then that tagline in turn is actually describing the kind of value that you are trying to give to your eventual customer. Then you talk about the problem. What is the real life problem that you're trying to solve? See, please understand, this is a very critical slide because many a time a problem is perceived by an entrepreneur and it actually may not be a real problem. So you are in that sense that you have to be able to actually quantify this in some way, or it should be something that is quite apparent. It cannot be something which is vague, abstract. So, and then obviously, if there is a problem, you have to obviously describe the third point, which is how many people have this problem, or how many industries have this problem, or what kind of customers have this kind of problem. So, defining or basically giving indications about the market is very important. And then what's the kind of solution that you have? How are you going to solve this problem, right? In the sense that there are 2-3 ways in which it can be done. And then you describe about your service or product. In the sense, the point number 4 is a very broad statement about your solution. And the point number 5 is you actually describe your product or service that you're trying to introduce. What are the features it has? And then you have, where's the money coming from? Which is actually nothing but the business model of the company. Where is the money coming from? How are you going to generate money for this? And then you have traction. So this is for startups which have already gone to market, in which case, if you've already gone to market, what are the kind of customers you have, how many customers you have, and maybe throw in some feedback saying customer A has described this and so on. And then you have, in case you have still not gone to market, you're still at prototype or a minimum viable product stage, what would be interesting is to see what is going to be your go-to-market strategy. How are you going to take your product into the market? And then the next important, this thing would be why you. I mean, how is it that you as a startup team, so you might have 1 person, 2 persons, or 3 or 4, who are whatever you have. It could be founders or it could be key employees. Key employees are typically very senior kind of employees who occupy important positions. So you need to be able to demonstrate how the team is going to, be able to deliver this solution and be able to go to market and actually scale within the market. Then you have the numbers game, which is basically talks about how you're going to acquire customers and how you go about doing it. And then you have, of course, this thing on the competition. Who are the competitors in the market? What are the features that they have? How are you better? And so on. And then you have the ask. So typically, if a pitch deck is going to be, is normally, I think majority of the time, it's actually either in front of an investor or a customer. So typically, if it's a case of an investor, you have to ask, what is the kind of fund you're looking at? How are you going to use this fund? And then you need to have a few, things which are lined up, which are not necessarily presented, but they are like a part of, the entire presentation that you would be having. So in the background, you need to have slides which are not presented, but if a question is asked, you can have a backup slide on what's the kind of exit you would like to give investors, what are the kind of partnerships you have, if you have a demonstration, you can do it. So typically you need to understand, like I said, you have 10 minutes, right? So you can't show a lot of things. It may even be less than 10 minutes. So in which case, what you need to be very careful is, especially if you are kind of, when you talk, best is not to repeat things again and again. I have during times where a startup will start wasting time, number one. Number two, they will try to prepare an elaborate video which goes beyond, say 45 seconds. And many a time the video doesn't actually describe anything about the product or service. So the demo is best kept as a backup, unless you think you have an excellent 30-second to 45-second demo, which can actually give a complete insight about what your product or service is. Otherwise, you should always keep it as a backup, and then you can request during the end of the presentation, if you still have time, you can probably request the jury that I have a demo which I would like you to see, right? So these are the broad parameters. Now let's look at, so typically an intro slide, you need to have the name of your company, and then the tagline, what your company does, and probably the name or the branding which you have. So that you need to understand the company name can be different and your brand name can be different. Okay, so because company name is typically a registration or a legal entity kind of a scenario. So whereas your brand could be anything that you conjure up. So a brand might typically not necessarily become the name of the company. There will be very few cases where the brand and the name of the company would be the same, right? So this you can look up. For example, Airbnb, it started off as Air Bed and Breakfast, and later on it became Airbnb. So this is a typical introduction slide, right? So if you see the slide, note that there is hardly any text that is there. There is not much of description. So please keep this in mind. In all your slides, you need to keep the amount of text as minimum as possible, and try to see the size of the font size that you use is something which is easy for a person to grab. So like I said, the moment I say this, I can see Air Bed and Breakfast very clearly. So I know this is the name of the company. And the tagline is book rooms with locals rather than hotels. It's a very simple, crisp way of Airbnb saying that, okay, boss, you don't need to stay in hotels. You can now stay with the local people who are offering the rooms for you to stay, right? So it's a very, very crisp, nice way of communicating what your company is doing. And if I'm a founder and if I'm Airbnb's founder, I would say, welcome to all of you. I represent Air Bed and Breakfast. I'm so and so. I'm the CEO of the company. And I just wish to tell you that what Air Bed and Breakfast intends to do is to democratize the accommodation process across the world. So our aim is that we would bring in a large number of local people living in a particular city to offer their homes or their rooms for people to come and stay and offer a simple bed and breakfast. So you see, it's how you have a slide which gives the basic stuff, and you as a presenter actually adds the other points which are not there, which are not mentioned. So which means unless you have a grip on every slide, so every slide might have, the text can be only 5 seconds, but then you will talk maybe a minute or maybe less than a minute. It depends on how many slides you have, because all your slides need to fit into something like 10 minutes. Or, it depends. Whatever competitions decide or what investors decide, normally 7 to 10 minutes is the kind of thing. So you can decide how much time you need to spend on each slide, right? So this is InstaMojo. I think some of you might know this. It's an online marketplace. So you see, they have so this is the introduction slide. It just says InstaMojo and it says we make selling online as easy as sharing. So it's a very typical introduction slide wherein you have certain amount of information and which kind of gives anybody there a very quick glance about your company. Right. Then we come to the problem. So, what is the problem plaguing an organization? Who it affects? In the sense, who are the entities that are affected by the problem? Like I said, there's the market. What is the kind of impact or consequence of the problem? Okay, and solution. What is the recommendation for solving the problem? Now, what you need to understand in the problem statement is try to use graphics. The reason being, a picture can convey 1,000 words. In the sense that you are actually, depicting the problem in using graphics, so it's easy for people to relate, so that you don't have to put in too much text. It's a slightly difficult way to do it, but then there are hundreds of, again, when you use images or when you use pictures, please remember, be careful on the copyright, because of late there are lots of challenges in terms of online usage of images. So try to go to sites where free or no copyright based pictures are available, and you can find pictures which can actually relate to the kind of problem that you are solving. So if you see Uber, earlier, Uber cab, before it became Uber. So it says, for example, the problem statement is most of the cab companies use aging and inefficient technology. It's always based on a radio dispatch. There is no two-way communication. And normally, a typical most common car is used. There are no, alternatives to the kind of cars that are available. Whereas I see that my solution as a Uber cab, the hailing is done by the hand or phone. In the other case, there is the hailing is done by hand or phone, so there is no GPS coordination. And there is significant fare seeking or dead time, in the sense that by the time the fare is decided and how the metering is done, etc. So this is a typical problem statement which was put forth by Uber cab, saying that these are the problems which are currently there in the market, and how we as Uber are going to address it. So it's a very typical problem statement. You can again see the amount of text that is used is very less, and there's a figure of a cab which is there, and which was how the cabs used to look like. So in India, of course, we had lots of cities which had the black and yellow cabs, but today you had radio cabs like Meru, etc., which are all green in color. So it was like a very staid, laid back, well established kind of this thing, which Uber tried to change, right? So this, and if you see in the problem statement itself, a lot of communication is being given as to what would be the kind of solution. So Uber would ensure that GPS coordination will be there. Uber will ensure that cars could be of different types, because each driver would bring his own car. There would be two-way communication. There would be hardly any time. The fare is kind of decided and fixed much before the cab comes to your location. So you can make out that the way the problem statement is done, the solution looks very apparent, that these are the kind of problems that they're going to solve. Okay. Urja Cart was an Indian company. It's an online marketplace. Initially, they started off with services, etc. And then now they're typically for tools, and basically it's a B2B company. It was tackling the ability of people to source tools, equipments across the country. Because many a time you realize that a particular thing is not available in the city where you are operating from. Now, where do I find it? So they basically looked at an unorganized sector. So you can see the image. It clearly shows an unorganized sector, which is basically a street where the local people were doing. So people do not have access. Then there is lack of knowledge. People do not know what is to be used and where it can be used. And then, of course, like, for example, inefficient services. So this was the kind of problem. So there, as you can see, that there is an image which is used, and there are very small taglines with each image, describe the kind of problem, right? So again, you can see that what would be the solutions. So it's very clear that Urja Cart will provide you catalogs or provide you information which will help you to figure out what is to be done. The practical knowledge which you would not have for a particular product or this thing would be described. And then you would probably have a list of people who would provide the right kind of services and who can provide it on time and who are efficient, which means they'll put together people who can actually offer the service, and they would do some kind of backup check and so on. So these are two examples. I mean, I just randomly picked just to show you how a problem statement can be defined. Then comes the solution part. Like I said, the problem statement itself contains the places where you are going to bring the intervention. So because of the previous slide, the problem is actually defined. And hence, you can now very easily say that, my solution or our solution is a cost-effective solution, or does it save time? Does it increase the quality of life? Is it more efficient? And so on. So it's kind of describing the value proposition of your solution. So again, a slide which needs to be very carefully done, very crisp, in a very easy manner. It has to be described. So if you look at InstaMojo, the first slide of what is it that I am solving, it says that it's just a simple, window where a person he lands onto our website and he does a quick sign up and he is able to, move forward, saying that, okay, I'm going to sell goods online. So you can make out that the use of the graphic quickly tells you that InstaMojo solution is it's a web portal, it's an online marketplace, and it's very easy for one to figure out. And then how do you sell? You upload your content, what you want to sell, you share and sell. So you see, the description of the solution, again, use of graphics instead of a lot of text is very easy. So their idea of InstaMojo, as the word itself says, Insta, right? So which means you do it pretty quick. So you upload, you share, and you sell, right? So it's 3 simple steps. It is done, and not that the selling happens, but then that's how it is, right? So the other thing I forgot to mention was when you're trying to name a company, please remember that you could be asked is, why do you have this name for your company? So it cannot be something which you randomly, decide. There has to be a logical or a rational explanation as to how you select the name of the company. So please be careful. Don't arbitrarily use some name. Try to ensure that there is a logical explanation that you can give. And many a time the name, would kind of broadly describe your solution, broadly. Not always, but typically that's what, because many a time it's difficult to find names which will describe. Okay, then once you've given the overall or the broad this thing, then you get down into details in terms of what are the features. So again here, this is a tough slide because typically any product or service will have many features. But then you need to pick and choose the most important features. There could be other features which you can just, brush it off, saying that in addition to this, we also have features. But the key features, which kind of really is able to describe your product or service, and the features which can also be used to tell what is the competitive advantage you have. This is very important. For example, if there is a if the problem is, let's say, a kitchen appliance, which is going to be used for cutting and blending, which is typically mixers and grinders. So you will have certain key features: how many jars, how many speeds of this thing, right? How many different types of blades, right? So you'll have some 6 or 7 features, and you should be able to say that, okay, we have Sumit, we have Prestige, we have these are the features which are given by all of them, whereas as our product, has this and more. And then also in terms of efficiency, why am I better than some of those other things? So it's very important that to be able to link it to competition, the features that you're going to describe over here is very important, because it's the same features on which you are going to compare your product or service with a competitor, right? So one is describing your solution. The other is using the same thing to do a competitor analysis. So the same kind of feature. That's how you pick what are the kind of features that I need to show over here. For example, this is again a Uber cab. Must be a member to use the service. Professional and trustworthy clientele will be there, not hailed from the street. So this is a typical, description of the solution which Uber cab had thought of at that time, and it's a digital hail. So if you can see, it's basically done from a mobile phone, and there's a direct communication with the client, and then there are no typical licenses required at that point in time. Later on, of course, Uber got into some regulatory issues, but then initially when they started, you don't have to apply for the driver did not have to apply for a license, and it started becoming easy. So Uber's concept was that a driver becomes the entrepreneur, right? And then guaranteed pickup and so on. So these are typical ways in which an Uber cab's, click car service solution can be described. This was the initial stage. Now it's of course very different, because it's now 10 years plus. Then the key differentiators. So it's only for members, which means you register. There's a one-click hailing. There's a very fast response time. You get luxury automobiles. You have great drivers. It's a high-tech solution, which means you know where you're going. And then there is a optimized fleet. So if you can see the key differentiators, this clearly tells what is there in Uber, which is probably not there in anybody else, right? So these are all features, and you can see these are all features. If you can look at it, it's a feature of the product. Okay, there is a one-click facility available. The response time is a feature in the sense how quickly are you connected to a driver, what is the kind of cars that you're going to use, who are the kind of drivers, and so on. You see, so basically these are features. And these features in turn will help you to differentiate vis-a-vis the other companies. So that's a very important thing that you need to keep in mind when you are trying to describe your product or service. One is the features and the other is the differentiator, and how different are you, which is basically you've done a competitor analysis and you know how different you are. Okay, then market study. This is a very, very crucial step. You should be able to have answers for the following. How big is the market for your startup? So you need to conduct a survey to know how many competitors are there. How easy would it be for existing companies to copy your solution? Size of the market vis-a-vis your niche. Then basic profiling of your customers, like age, sex, purchase habits, and so on. So, market study becomes a very, very important, because this is probably going to set the tone for you to do anything subsequent in terms of the ask, right? The ask will very clearly be defined based on the kind of market study that you have done. So typically, there are, if you look at a typical slide, again, this is an Airbnb kind of so the total market size, that is the total number of trips that are booked worldwide. The total, it's called the TAM, total available market. is 1.9 billion plus trips. Available market in the sense, how many of these trips which are booked worldwide are budget and online trips? Because that is where Airbnb's niche is. Airbnb looks at providing accommodation with locals, right? So which means typically somebody is going to try and book online, right? And they are trying to look for a budget option. I mean, they're not trying to look for a 7-star or a 5-star or a big hotel kind of accommodation. So there'll be a total serviceable available market, and which is about 532 million. This was the Airbnb's case when they started off, almost 10 years back, I guess. And then you try and say, out of this serviceable available market, what was the kind of market share I would try and get, say, over the next the first 3 years or the first 5 years, right? So the market share, 10.6 million. So out of 532 million, I, as a startup, within the next 3 years, would like to, address 10.6 million. Okay. 10.6 million trips, right, is what I would try and target as a company. So you have the total market is the total number of trips. Then you have the number of trips which are done through, online budget, because you will have competitors. No company typically has this thing where competitors are not there. I have mentioned this earlier also. You don't have a totally unique solution because invention is a very rare thing. It never happens. Most of the time you kind of innovate within what exists. And out of these, how many trips would I try to this thing? Which means I will ensure that 10.6 million trips are done by Airbnb over the next 3 years. So this is how you basically define. So again, when you put these figures, you need to put the source. For example, worldwide. How do you find out what are the trips worldwide? So obviously there are literature available on the internet. So whenever you quote any figure, please remember, whenever you quote any figure, please quote the source. So at the bottom, there has to be a tagline which says the source is so and so. Because otherwise you can be questioned as to where did you get this figure from, right? And these sources typically should be authentic sources. So WhatsApp University does not work over here. What works is an established company which has published a report, or it could be a government which has published a report. So when I say established company, typically you have companies, for example, in the case of IT and software, Gartner is is probably the most trusted source of telling you what is happening in the IT and software industry, right? So if you pick out anything from a Gartner, it's valid. Or you say you pick out from a report which is published by, say, McKinsey. McKinsey is a very reputed worldwide company, and they periodically come out with reports of different sectors. So they will say the aerospace sector, or in this case, it's the hospitality sector. So McKinsey or a KPMG or an Ernst & Young, these are reputed, trusted companies, which periodically publish reports as to and giving details about what is the market and what is happening. So you can pull out from sources which are authentic. So please remember that. Don't blindly put some figure onto this. There has to be some validation, and you have to quote the source. From where or which publication, which year did you take out this information? Okay. Of course, that pertains only to the trips booked worldwide. That is the total available market, and the serviceable available market figures need to be authenticated. What you are trying to achieve, you don't have to authenticate. Your pitch is talk about how you're going to do that. And then you give a description of who are the competition. So this is again a competition. This is an Urja Cart kind of what are the competitors for Urja Cart. So there's a MacPowerTools.com, there's a Telexo, there's an Amazon, there's Industry Buying, and you can probably give a brief description. And then you can have a table wherein you can say, of course, it is very difficult for us to make these kind of tables because we have not started these companies. But then you can say that Telexo there are 6 features of my product. So Telexo offers how many of the 6? and how does it rate vis-a-vis those 6? It might not offer all the 6. It might have only 3. It might have only 4. How many does industry buying have? So a table which kind of, wherein you have a tick and a cross and you say who is offering what. And then there is a cost. You can say that the pricing factor for these companies are so and so, whereas ours is very different. So there are ways in which you can actually project your competition and give a analysis of who your competitors are. So if I say as Urja Cart, I will say it's the first online complete. I'll give a broad spectrum, and then I will compare each of these features vis-a-vis the features of those 4 companies, right? So that's a very important thing that you people need to remember. So this is again in the case of a company which is providing online analytics. So you have companies which give you free services. You have companies which give you paid services. Out of them, you have 2 kinds of companies. One are startups and the other are big ventures. So incumbents are big ventures. So Google is a big company. Omniture is again a big company. So here, this is a case of positioning Flurry. So as a startup, I say I am a startup and I provide free services. Whereas you have competitors who are all paid. My only big competitor is going to be Google Analytics. So it very clearly positions you as to where Flurry is going to sit vis-a-vis the competition, right? I'm going to sit in the free space and my competitor is going to be Google Analytics. So in just one slide, it becomes very clear where the competitors are and what is the kind of landscape I'm looking at. Then we come to business model. How do you generate value for your customers? In a sense, that's a very important thing that you will need to be able to tell. How do you deliver this to them? How are they going to get access to this? And then how do you plan on making money? So what are the typical revenue models will you have? Is it a one-time payment, or is it something that they will subscribe as a service? And whenever they subscribe for the service, they pay for it. Or is it going to be one time? Is it an annual payment? Is it a, so there are several ways in which you can make money. So you need to be very clear that you come out with this thing. How are you going to do it, right? So for example, value proposition. Again, if you look at Airbnb, how do I provide the service to the customer? A customer is planning to go to, say, Kulu Manali. So in the search by city, there is a city listing. So he picks out the city that he has to go. He sees what are the listing. That means how many people are offering rooms and what kind of rooms, what are the prices. So there's a search page, there's a review page, and there's a booking page, and wherein you just make a click and you make a payment and your booking is done, right? So this is again, if you look at it, a slide which very clearly kind of shows. You can add graphics. You can show how the search by city tab looks like, how the review page, how a typical review page looks like, and how you book it, right? So this is one example of how are you delivering the value. So you can see it's a very clear, it's a very simple way of booking. You just search, you review, and you book, right? So that's the value and a quick process by which a customer can actually book a room through Airbnb. If you look at the business model of, going further, I had said that 10.6 million would be the kind of trips that I would like to, as Airbnb. And then I say that my revenue model is I will charge a commission on every booking that is made. So which means roughly average cost is say 70 per night for 3 nights. So I will make a commission of 10%. So which means $7 per night. So I make around $21. We have just to round it off to make it simple. Average, I will say $20 is what I make for a typical booking that is going to happen. And since I will do around 10 million, my revenue for the first 3 years is going to be 200 million. You see, so this is the way in which a business model could be presented. So you have, how is the customer going to come and book? And And budget hotel typically in the US would be around $70 per night. So like, for example, a budget hotel in India would range between 1,500 and say 2,500. So I will take 2,000 rupees as a typical budget hotel stay. Okay. And then I say a 10% on that, which means I say 200 rupees for every booking that is made on the app, right? So this is a very simple way of actually explaining how a business model can be presented, right? And it kind of gives an overall picture. So a person is able to, so when an investor and an expert is sitting on the other side, for example, he knows it is $70 a night. It's not a cooked up figure because everybody would roughly know what a budget hotel costs, right? And then so the mathematics in this slide is a very simple maths, something which becomes very obvious. Of course, you have a backup Excel sheet somewhere, which kind of will break this down into a more, significant way in terms of, if I'm going to make 200 million, what is going to be my expense for that? Okay, my revenue is coming in, but what's going to be my expense, right? So for that, you have financials and milestones. So it's very important for you to tell where you are in terms of your idea. Are you at an idea stage? Are you at prototype stage? Are you at go-to-market stage? Or are you in market? So, and then milestones in terms of what all you achieved, when did you achieve it, how long did you take to achieve it? Your plan for the next 1, 3, 5 years, which means how many customers are you going to get, or how is your idea going to progress? So typically, 5 years is general yardstick, but many a time in case of idea stage companies, even a 3-year projection is good enough. Whereas if you are a go-to-market stage or in market stage, then a 5-year plan is what would typically be required. Then expenses. See, very important that you, like I said, you need to have a backup slide. So you have two kinds of expenditures. Typically what is called as CapEx, which means capital expenditure. And then you have OpEx, which is operational expenditure. So CapEx expenditures are typically one time. Like for example, let's say you buy a laptop for developing your software. So the cost of the laptop becomes a CapEx. Let's say you're buying a license of a particular software, right? And if that is a one-time license, then it becomes CapEx. Whereas if that license has to be renewed every year, it becomes OpEx, right? Because it becomes an operational expenditure. So and CapEx typically, for example, also links to anything which you buy as a product, which becomes an asset for your company, right? So it could be monitors, it could be like, for example, a UPS, it could be a DG, a diesel generator, it could be, permanent items will all come under CapEx, right? And every company will require certain permanent items, right? As you go forward, maybe when you start, you might not require, but maybe if not at the year beginning, it may be after 6 months, it may be after 1 year, or it may be in the second year, but CapEx will definitely be there. OpEx are all your day-to-day expenditures, expenditures which will keep recurring. For example, let's say you are going to take a building on rent. So typically that becomes an OpEx because you pay that rent every year, every month. It could be an electricity bill. Paying for your electricity is like an OpEx. Paying salaries to manpower is OpEx. Paying maintenance charges. So anything which is a recurring expenditure will come under an OpEx. So you have CapEx, which are more like one time, which may not repeat. In some cases, they will repeat. For example, today you have a team size of 5, so you'll buy 5 laptops. Tomorrow there'll be a team size of 20, so you'll buy 20 laptops. But again, the point is that the 5 laptops which you buy will stay with you, right? So that is why it comes under a capital expenditure. So you typically need to have a 3 to 5 year, what is called as a cash flow statement, wherein you typically talk about how your cash is going to flow, which means cash is going to come in, cash is going to go out. So you need to be able to give this picture, which is typically done in an Excel sheet. And again, templates are available. You can just go and pick out a template which you think is suitable, and you can just punch in the numbers. Be very careful. You need to have this thing, because if somebody asks you a question, you cannot blindly say it is going to cost so much. Okay, especially if it is a product, then you have material cost, you have fabrication costs, then you'll have packaging costs. So you need to keep all these figures. And you can't arbitrarily decide that, okay, my product is so and so, because you need to understand that your revenue will have to be linked with the expense, in the sense, if this is what I'm going to be spending, how much should I be making, right? So your decision about how much you make, like for example, how did Airbnb arrive at, I will do a commission of 10%, right? So there will be a logic. So they would have worked out what was the kind of CapEx and OpEx they were looking at, and based on which they were able to arrive at this figure of the commission. Remember that, without doing a proper, decently, I'm not saying that you need to have a very elaborate statement, but then you should not miss out on knowing what are your major OpEx heads and what are your major CapEx heads. And you have actually done your math very well for this. And then, of course, you have an ask. So which means most companies keep requiring capital. So the capital you might get from debt, which means you might go to a bank and you might get. Typically in many of the service companies, because they would have paying clients. So services normally, are slightly more stable kind of organizations, because your client list is kind of reasonably well established, because you have these clients who are going to pay you so much. So typically in many of the service companies, they don't typically ask for capital unless the service is a very niche service, and where the client companies might not pay the whole amount in advance or something like that, in which case they would raise capital, but that would again typically be a debt kind of a scenario. They would not try and raise equity. Whereas product companies typically will have to raise equity because you need capital at various stages. So it's not only about asking how much you want, but it's also how are you going to use it. Okay. So that's very important to show how capital is going to get spent. And then, of course, how many clients which will be acquired. Again, idea stage companies, these will be projections. So you need to be very careful about your total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, and your market share, right? And then how many markets are you going to reach? For example, if you look again at the Airbnb, the 1.9 billion was all countries put together. But finally, they said that we will look at only the US market, and within the US market, we will do only 10 million trips. So you need to decide. So if you're an Indian company or market is in India, you can say that I'll first start in Karnataka, and then I will do the adjoining states. So then I will migrate to Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and then maybe central India, and then north. Or I will begin from Karnataka and then I will do Delhi, the capital market. So it's about trying to tell. So the clients you acquire and the markets that you're going to reach are kind of hand in hand. So you need to be very clear about this, because reaching to different markets is not easy. For example, I can do in Karnataka because I'm based in Mysuru. So it's easy for me to address the Karnataka market because the language is there and it's easy to commute. I can reach in most places of Karnataka, overnight journey, right? Maximum will be some 12 hours or 14 hours journey. Whereas if I have to do Tamil Nadu and I have to go into the interior parts of Tamil Nadu, it becomes challenging. The language is different. There could be challenging scenarios because that's, so we need to be very clear as to why are we trying to get into a market and why do you think we are confident enough that I can do it, right? So then obviously there has to be a slide on funding. How much money have you raised so far? How much money have you spent? And for what was the money spent on? And then how did you get the funding, in the sense, who gave the money? Was it friends, family? Was it personal savings? Or have you raised money from an angel investor? It's always good to give these figures because there is credibility. If somebody has put money in you, it's a lot of credit. It's credibility for your startup because there is somebody who believes. Of course, friends, family money is not typically taken very seriously, but if there is an angel investor, then you please remember that you are in a very strong footing because you already have somebody who believes in you, somebody who is himself an angel who understands this domain, has invested in you. So this slide also becomes very important because this is a validation. Then, as I said, the team. So your key team, you don't have to put everybody there. It's typically the founders. And if you have any key employees, like for example, you might be a founder, but you might have a CTO, Chief Technical Officer, who is not a founder, in which case you will have to describe about him. So each team member, why are you suitable? What are the strengths? Sorry, there's a spelling mistake there. What are the strengths which each of the team members? Please remember, every team or any team should have complementary skills. So one person cannot be good in everything. There'll be somebody who will be very good in finance. There'll be somebody who will be good in marketing and PR. There'll be somebody who will be very good in technology. So you need to highlight what are the strengths. So each team member will bring certain key strengths to the table. And that is very important because if you have to delete that you have made so far, then your team composition should be such that it can prove that, okay, this team has the expertise, has this thing to actually do this, right? So as students, of course, you don't have work experience, or if you have work experience part-time, it would be great to put that. But then you can always say what your key skills are. Like some of you would be very good at talking. So if you're very good at talking, typically you will make a good marketing or a good marketing and public relations guy. There'll be somebody else who's done academically very sound, very good basics. So typically you say that, okay, and this particular student would have done some project. So, what I'm trying, there are 3 of us in this team, in this group, and we bring these things to the table. So that is why we will be able to actually deliver on this. And then, of course, who is going to take up what responsibility? Who's going to be in charge of developing the product? Who's going to be in charge of going and talking to customers? Who is going to be in charge of, raising the money which is required, right? So why you make a good team will depend on all these above 3 factors. If you're able to describe this properly, then you definitely have a great team. And then there will be a slide on the ask. Typically, it is about how much money you require, what's the money required, and then when do you require it, and how do you propose to use it. So for example, here you don't have to give a very big Excel. It is more of, I will use this to augment manpower. I will use this to, improve marketing and setting up marketing offices in other states. Or it could be something like investing in more equipments, investing in more, need money for ramping up production. So there are, costs which are, as I increase the production of a product, I have material costs which will increase. I have something else which will increase. So how am I going to deploy this money? So from making 50 products in year 1, in year 2, I want to make 200 products. So there is going to be a expense, right? So that is why I'm raising the money, and that is how I'm proposing to use it, right? So the ask slide is important in many cases because typically any company will not have all the capital unless you have a service company and you have good revenue. Otherwise, typically the ask will be there for most companies, because even if it's a service company, many of them will have to go in for debt kind of funding. Of course, this slide I talked about last time. I'm just repeating it. There are several benefits of participating in this pitch fest, because if you see what is required to be put together in a pitch deck, you just imagine the kind of information, knowledge that you get. It is you have, and then knowledge which are multiple dimensions. So the knowledge about markets, the knowledge about products, knowledge about competitors, knowledge of finance. So you see, there are so many different skills that you will develop. And obviously, it is an audience. If your product idea is good and you get shortlisted, you will get to present in front of experts. So experts can give you feedback. So it becomes a great opportunity for you to actually be able to go on stage. I mean, basically, of course, nowadays, thanks to COVID, you might not go on stage, but then you will go online and you will make a great presentation using a PowerPoint, which some experts are going to see. It will give you immense confidence. See, it's about trying to do something that, is different from what you've been doing all these days. And like I mentioned, you never know. You can find mentors, investors, well-wishers. So I think some of the companies which participated last time, they went on to find mentors. In fact, one company works in our Mysore center. We have given them the space free, and they come and they are developing their product there. So there are so many different things that can come out as an outcome of this pitch deck. And also remember that it's not just about having an entrepreneurial career. It helps significantly as far as a professional career is concerned. So with that, I'm actually ending my presentation. So it looks very challenging, what I've spoken all this while. But please remember, it is not that difficult. You just have to apply yourself, do the proper research. You spend a little bit of time, you should be able to put together most of this stuff. Especially if you're an idea stage company, then a lot of things get simplified because you're talking more about idea and how the idea is going to go forward till you reach a go-to-market kind of scenario. And then you're more projecting information. Believe me, it's a fabulous exercise. If not anything else, I mean, nothing like going through with this. It looks challenging, but it is not. It looks as though you have to, do a lot of work. Yes, you have to do work. But then if you have a team and, 3 or 4 of you are there, you can always split up the things that need to be done. Somebody looks after this particular aspect. Somebody looks after that. Right. And anyway, we are there to guide you. So the WhatsApp group is there. Those of you who have not joined, I think Gajendra, you can put out your email ID so people can communicate to him and you can join the WhatsApp group, those who are not there. But for joining the WhatsApp group, you have to have registered on the TiE platform. So for those of you who joined today, I think Gajendra, can you just put out the registration link on the TiE website and also your email ID so that people who have not registered can go and register, because registering is important for getting onto the WhatsApp group. We will be conducting 1 or 2 more sessions. It depends on how many teams we are getting. So we will have 1 or 2 more knowledge sessions where we'll talk about business model canvas, which is again a very important thing, and also business plan, because these are 2 documents that you need to keep available with you. So that is it from my side. So if you have any questions, so please have a look at the chat box. The registration link for the TiE is put up. So please go and register. Those of you who have friends whom you know are doing so, as I mentioned, 2019 and 2020 graduates are also eligible to apply. So those of you who know your seniors, please tell them that this kind of a facility opportunity is there and that you need people should apply, right? And those who had applied last time and did not get shortlisted can apply again if you have made progress, right? So, and you have not, kind of got into the top 3 or top 5, you can still apply. So that's now we'll open out for question and answers. If any of you have any questions.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Yes.
Sir, my name is Mazhar Hussain, sir.
Yes.
Sir, actually, I have derived one formula in physics.
Actually, I have derived one formula in physics. Hello.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Actually,
Yes.
I have derived one formula in physics. Actually, I wanted to patent that formula.
So this is not the platform for that. You can contact us separately for that. Okay.
No, sir. I wanted to start up from that. It is based on photoelectric effect. From that, we can make more power from the same source of energy.
Yeah. So Mazhar, see what is it that you're asking? See, this platform is not to help you to patent. This is for you to put together what your idea is, what it does, whatever I have presented till now. It's about trying to describe it. Now, how you go about doing it is a different matter, right?
Okay.
So this platform is not meant for that. You can contact us separately. You can make out a pitch, you can present it. And then in case you have to get anything done, do something, then you have to contact us separately, because this platform, the TiE Pitch Fest, is not meant to solve your problems. It is meant for you to project what you want to do. Okay.
Pitch.
Right. So how you are going to do it is something which has to be taken up separately.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm very surprised. Nowadays, nobody asks questions.
Hello, sir. Kaustubh here.
Yes.
Yeah, sir, you told about market research, right? So
yes.
I was currently working on a product involving RFID-based applications.
Right.
So we see that RFID applications are used for our FASTag toll gates and also for our Bengaluru Metro. Right. So we have developed a kind of low-cost prototype for something similar. Okay. So I would like to understand, how do we do the market research and understand at what cost these products are supplied to Bengaluru Metro or NHAI for tolls and all, to get an idea at what price we should market our product or sell it at, to get some idea about it.
Yeah. So first of all, it depends on the domain you want to sell. So you can find out reports which talk about, metro services, right? From where, you'll get an idea about what is the kind of product that is used, right? And then how many metros are going to be there throughout the country, right? How many cities are going to have this metro? So how many cities are going to have the metro, and what is going to be the projected number of customers? You can find it on the internet. There'll be some report somewhere which says that the Bangalore Metro will eventually cater to so many customers. Delhi Metro will cater to so many customers. So you will get the addressable market, total addressable market based on that, and how many cities are planning to put in a metro. All this information you will get on the net. But then your product might be a ticket, right, which has an RFID, a pass which has an RFID feature. So then you get onto the internet, who manufactures these products, right? And then many of these people, you can even make a phone call, right? You can make a phone call and say that, see, I'm interested in knowing what's the cost of your product, because I have this company and I'm interested in buying something. So lots of companies will have websites where you can actually ask for information, or you can call them. You have to put in some effort to put out the cost on the website itself. So you will easily come to know that, this costs so much. Right. So you have to get on to, find out who are the companies which make similar products. So that you can Google, you'll easily find.
Correct.
So then you go into that site. If they have a order form or something, you can find out, or you can talk to a salesperson and find out. You don't have to tell them you're a startup doing that. You can always tell that I'm a company, I'm looking for something, right? And I'm interested in knowing what's the kind of cost it will not be easy. You might not get it from every source.
Correct.
But even if you get one or two sources, that will be good enough.
We project as if we are trying to coming as a client to get their device, something like that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Hello, sir. Myself, Shishir. I had a query. I just wanted to know whether if this platform is for graduates or even students who are just
2019 graduate, 2020 graduates, and current students, all are eligible to apply, including masters. It's not necessary that you have to be an undergrad student. So bachelor's, master's students, even PhD scholars can apply as long as you're a bona fide student. And 2019 and 2020 graduates.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So I think, Gajendra, you can make an announcement now.
Yes, sir. I request everyone
on the camera.
Please switch on your camera so that we can take a picture.
Please switch on your cameras. We just like to take a quick picture. Most people, let's do it quick. We have lots of people to switch on yet. Request everybody. Gajendra, have you finished?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So any further questions? Okay, then. So please stay in touch with us. And any clarifications you have, you can email. Or those of you who are in the WhatsApp group can put up the questions on the WhatsApp group. We will try and help you out. Okay. So thank you very much.